Welcome to A Day with Dre. I'm your host, Dre. Appreciate you for taking some time to listen. But before we get into it, please take the time to like, subscribe, comment, repost to A Day with Dre podcast. This podcast is available anywhere you listen to or watch podcasts, whether that be YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, TikTok, Reels, whatever, Shorts, all the different versions of media, whether that's on your way to work in the car, or if you're just scrolling and want some brain rot short clips, I got you covered. All right, so what's been going on since the last time we talked? A lot. Of course, there's the whole Iran-Israel/US conflict. But before we really get into that, another thing that was a little more personal to me was Juneteenth, which I worked, and that's kind of crazy when you think about it. But again, before we really get into Juneteenth and just some of the stuff that's been going on since our last episode, remember, please just hit that subscribe button, give it a like, dislike, I don't really care. Just give some sort of interaction that really helps me out. All right. So Juneteenth, I don't think I really have to explain what Juneteenth is. If you listen to my podcast, you probably know what Juneteenth is. Juneteenth is not the day the slaves were freed. That's not the day of the executive order. That was the Emancipation Proclamation. That's the day the last slaves were told they were freed, which was it was over a year after the Lincoln issued the ending of slavery, because there were still slaves in Texas on a plantation that didn't know they were freed yet until the Union troops came and freed them. And so that's Juneteenth. That happened on June 19th. So Juneteenth is just June and 19 put together into one word. So it's just a shortening. It's Juneteenth. Interestingly enough, on Juneteenth, we get this message from the president saying that there are too many paid non-working days. And of course, you're going to get a bunch of people that'll say Juneteenth is National Independence Day. There's only one Independence Day. Why do they get a holiday, etc.? But I would argue that Juneteenth, if you think Juneteenth is a day that only Black people should celebrate, then you're actually part of the problem. And the reason that Juneteenth is so important, because as an American and honestly as a human that believes in goodness in the world, I would think even if you aren't a direct descendant of anybody that was a part of the institution of slavery, everyone should be happy about the day the last slaves were freed, right? Don't you think that is one of the biggest triumphs of America? Doesn't that sound like a day that all people should celebrate? You should see people of all backgrounds in America celebrating the day slavery ended. Because if you think of slavery as something that slavery ending just benefiting Black people, then I don't know, you can't say that and then on one hand say that we're all Americans and that we all are in this together, but then say, well, that holiday is only for those Americans. Because if you really believe that we're your fellow Americans, you should be celebrating the fact that, our people got freed on that day. But I digress. It really, kind of shows people's true colors. And also, this isn't going to turn into some anti-Lincoln rant, but one thing that needs to get understood is that the Emancipation Proclamation was actually just freeing slaves in the states that seceded. It wasn't freeing all slaves everywhere. That didn't happen until the 13th Amendment, which kind of shows you how the slavery thing was a political tactic. The Union was kind of getting whooped in the war. And then that was more of a destabilizing tactic done by, at the time, the United States of America to try to really cripple the South. And obviously that proclamation really lifted the spirits of both Black folks that were enslaved and freed, knowing that the President of the United States had called for the freedom. Whereas, again, not to say that Lincoln was pro-slavery, but he freed the slaves in the South or in the Confederate States. There's a technical difference there. He freed the slaves in the seceded Confederate States and also urged the states that didn't leave the Union to adopt abolition. So he didn't use his power over the states that remained a part of the United States, which, again, not to sit here and try to dunk on Lincoln, but there was 500,000 states in the border states that remained a part of the Union where the slaves still remained. So, let's make sure we accurately depict our oh so great honest Abe, which still at that time was radical and more for Black people than any previous president had done, but it wasn't like he was like, all of you deserve your freedom. So that's the origin of Juneteenth, why this matters in 2025. There's obviously chattel slavery is no longer a thing that exists, which just means like slavery in the sense of like bondage and chains. That's no longer an institution in America. But why I'm talking about this is it was just last week, but Donald Trump on his, what is it, Truth Social had said that there's too many non-working holidays. It's costing our country billions of dollars to keep all the businesses closed. The workers don't want it either. Soon we'll end up having a holiday for every working day of the year. So again, coincidentally, he says that on Juneteenth, which is the newest federal holiday, but Juneteenth is not a new holiday. It's just a new federal holiday. And saying something like that on a federal holiday really is basically like, without saying it, you're basically saying, fuck this holiday, right? If you're going to complain about non-working paid holidays on a new non-working paid holiday that a lot of people already kind of say only one group of people should celebrate this holiday, which is an entire another problem, then you're kind of giving your hand that you're saying this holiday is not a real holiday. Like, you know, you could have said this on Columbus Day, aka Indigenous Peoples Day. You could have said it on President's Day, but why are we shitting on non-working holidays on Juneteenth, the holiday that's honoring people that literally were forced to work and do God knows just about everything else. They were forced to do it with no personal autonomy, and don't even get into the, well, they could have refused. Like, let's not go down that road. So I don't know. Again, Donald's Donald. I've spent enough time talking about how I feel about him as a person. Then the fact that a lot of people were like, you know what, he's right. What a useless holiday. Like, how can you be mad about having a day off to celebrate the last slaves getting freed? If you have a problem with that, then you are inherently anti what you claim America is supposed to stand for, literally the land of the free, home of the brave, and the largest group of people to be freed in this country. The only group of people that had to be freed in this country are celebrating when they officially all became free, and we're calling it a useless holiday. Like, come on, it's just nonsense. And of course, we like to politicize this into a Republican versus Democrat thing. But in reality, obviously, a lot of people that are Republican don't share that same feeling about Juneteenth. But the people that do feel that Juneteenth is a bad holiday or a useless holiday do typically vote Republican. So again, not saying all Republicans feel that way, but the people that feel that way tend to vote Republican. So for my people that aren't from like a Black or African-American background, people that aren't descendants of the transatlantic slave trade, I guess my personal challenge for you is, maybe, especially those of you with kids, maybe incorporate Juneteenth. And I'm not saying some stupid shit like one of my coworkers sent me a picture from a hospital and they were celebrating Juneteenth by having like a grape flavored drink and watermelon and chicken and greens and a piece of cornbread at the hospital. And that, like, I get it. Those are considered Southern/Black American things to eat, but let's lay off on the stereotypes when we're trying to celebrate Juneteenth. But, convince your family, convince your friends, explain to them why it's not only important to Black people. Because if that's the case, like if we want to start making holidays for certain people, then you can't be upset if Black people don't want to celebrate the 4th of July, because then you could argue that the 4th of July is only for Americans that weren't Black, because when America gained its independence, it still held Black people in captivity. Like, if it's a slippery slope, if it's the road you want to go down, being like Juneteenth is a fake holiday, it's only for those people, it's a woke holiday, it's a DEI holiday, all the stupid stuff that's been out there, then when all the people that, if women, because women didn't even really have like their independence and rights, Black people didn't have their independence and rights. If those groups just say, you know what, fuck the 4th of July, then like you can't be mad about that, because you're using that same logic to discount Juneteenth. And first of all, I don't care what a holiday stands for. If there's a paid day off of work, then like why are we complaining? And when Donald said that even the workers are saying there's too many paid days off, I don't know what workers he's talking about. Very few people will be like, man, we really get too many paid holidays. Maybe their bosses complain. The people that make a lot more money that have to pay people for one extra day off, because they can't continue to exploit them and make a bunch of money off of them. They're actually paying them to, chill out, especially if you're like a federal worker or something like that. You still get paid for that day. Maybe the people that are employing those people are upset about it, or the people that have to pay out time and a half are upset about it. But generally speaking, people that have your regular everyday jobs, no, they're not complaining about Juneteenth, like, or having a day off and getting paid for it. If Juneteenth can't be a federal holiday, if the reasoning for that being a federal holiday isn't good enough to be a federal holiday, then no holiday should be a federal holiday. And I don't think that's an extreme take at all. If celebrating the ending of the United States institution of slavery cannot be a holiday, then there is nothing that has ever happened regarding the United States or anywhere that should be considered a federal holiday. And I hear people say like, well, D-Day is not a federal holiday. It's like, well, it's just stupid. Like those D-Day and Juneteenth, those aren't the same thing. But if they want to make D-Day a federal holiday, then by all means make it a federal holiday. Because like I said, I'm never going to complain about there being too many federal holidays. And that comes from someone that works at a hospital that's open 365 days a year. So it doesn't matter what the holiday is, I might have to work on it. But with that being said, if there's a reason that the banks are closed or something like that, and people can just be at home and celebrate, I'm all for it. We need a little bit more of that anyways. So yeah, Juneteenth, that was last week. Going into this week, of course, we got the Israel and Iran situation going on. I just remember being at work, coming out, and everybody was like, fuck, we might be in the middle of the beginning of the next world war. And it's a long, complicated history, which Americans want to complain about, but then the same Americans that want to complain about that are the same Americans that'll be like, we need to put God back in our schools. So it's like you're literally trying to do the thing you're complaining about these other countries doing. You just believe your religion is the right way to do it and their religion is the wrong way to do it. But again, we can't see the hypocrisy in that, of course, as long as there's, not crimes against humanity, which honestly happen in the US, happen everywhere. It's not downplaying any of it. We can't just focus on crimes against humanity in other places because it looks different than the crimes against humanity we do here. Just because we're not literally killing people directly doesn't mean that, the way our government's set up or our country set up isn't directly hurting people as well. If people can't afford to take care of themselves and if a lot of people can't afford places to live, I would argue that our country is also indirectly killing people. But I'm not going to go on that rant right now. I already kind of did. But Israel had some strikes on Iran because Iran's supposed to not have nuclear capabilities to form weapons. Israel said that they've been developing or trying to develop nuclear weapons or the precursors to make nuclear weapons. So they launched a strike and Iran countered with breaking through the Iron Dome and hitting Israel. And then Trump was calling for things to calm down. And then the U.S. launched some strikes, hit some nuclear sites in Iran, claimed that they completely devastated Iran's nuclear facilities. And then there was something leaked that said that it was only a couple months setback. It didn't actually destroy the nuclear facilities. So, and then the White House spokesperson, I can't remember her name, said that it was some loser that wants to discredit the president, but Iran's nuclear capabilities are completely wiped away. Of course, we already know what Trump said, that it was probably something along the terms of outstanding, miraculous victory or something like that. And then he said there would be a ceasefire. And then this morning, apparently the ceasefire was breached by both sides. He's got his epic quote about them not knowing what they're doing. And now apparently the ceasefire is back on. And we'll see if that ceasefire does anything. And the history behind those two countries and that, honestly, the destabilization in that whole region, which obviously has the U.S. is heavily tied to, is very long. And that can be a whole nother episode. But people are already trying to claim victories or defeats. And honestly, I just have a bad feeling that this is just the beginning of another long drawn out process in that part of the world. And hopefully that doesn't result in U.S. boots on the ground, because that is supposed to be like one of the primary things that Trump ran on, which is in not being a part of any wars. He's Mr. Deal Maker. He's going to strike a deal. And I think it actually hurts his ego a little bit that he said they struck a deal and then there was apparently breaches of the ceasefire. But let's hope that Trump is right on this one. I have no problem with Trump being right if it means that there's more peace in the world. But To be honest with you, will there be peace? I doubt it, because this has been like a tension. There's been tension in amongst those countries for decades and decades and decades, and the different groups of people for centuries. So we'll see what happens. We could just only hope for the best. Yeah, things are heating up over there. It's sad. Hopefully, we don't have to end up with thousands and thousands of lives lost. Hopefully, we don't have to end up with any lives lost. But pretty much all my life, there's just been nonstop fighting in some shape or form over there in that part of the world. So you can just hope and pray for the best. Stateside, we talked about Juneteenth and how Juneteenth should be a holiday that everybody celebrates, not just people that were, or people who have, a family that were directly impacted by Juneteenth, but how as American we should all celebrate it. And when I really think about it, I think that the people that are, online posting stuff about Juneteenth, including the president, I almost don't think they really feel that way. I think that rage baiting has just gotten so popular, which is just, saying something ridiculous that is going to cause a reaction. It gets people talking about it, gets you to go viral. Obviously, Donald Trump doesn't need more fame to go viral, but I think he just likes people talking about him. I think those people just want attention, want clicks, and they troll so much that it eventually becomes their actual personality. But if you're watching versus listening, you'll see just the different examples of screenshots of people just saying ridiculous stuff about Juneteenth. And I think, again, that's just an indictment of our society, our culture. And when I say ours, I just mean like American society. I know there's a million different subcultures in America, but we'd rather say something ridiculous to put down others or dismiss others to get some type of clicks versus celebrating things that are trying to bring people together. And honestly, that's what we are in a nutshell. People that would rather be popular than be happy, because going viral and getting the attention, that's like a drug. And it's really sad and it's really unfortunate. And it's beyond people that are just reply guys in your comments. It's politicians. It's real. Honestly, it's kind of a mental illness. That is why we need to bring back bullying. So I know you didn't think I would pull that one out of my ass, but this is why we need to bring back bullying. People need to be afraid to say whatever you want. You need to just be able to hit a person in the mouth for being out of control. And I wholeheartedly, truly believe that. And when I say bullying, I don't mean someone that's actually a punk that's picking on smaller kids or anything like that. Really, what I'm trying to say is people should be afraid of the repercussions of what they say. You should be able to go upside someone's head. Someone telling me that Juneteenth shouldn't exist, I should be able to punch them in the nose for their hate speech against me. I should be able to count that as them making a threatening comment to me. I know you might think that sounds intense. I know you're probably like, violence isn't the way. But honestly, if we could just beat people up that deserve to be beat up, then I think people would maybe keep that stuff behind closed doors. And I know you're like, if they keep it behind closed doors, if they keep it in their mind, if they just keep it at home, then what does that really do? And honestly, it does a lot. Be a bigot in private, but this proudly this proudly saying it with your chest, being a bigot, talking down on people, to the point where our politicians are just being open about it. It's becoming so widely accepted that society is just going, a clear indicator that society is going backwards. People should not be allowed to say the things they say and have the feelings that they have when they're so damaging and harmful to other people. And I know you're going to be like, well, what happened to the tolerant left? And you're going to say it like, sarcastically. And honestly, I'm not tolerant. If your opinions are harmful towards other people simply for being who or what they are, then I'm not tolerant of it. And I will gladly stand on that. And I think we just need more people that hold prominent positions in this world that will share opinions like that. And again, I don't know if that's the correct way to do it, but I feel like we need to give it a try. We need to make people fear being open bigots. Make them at least ride around with their little white hoods on. But pumping up your chest and saying stuff openly that's clearly coded, or even not even coded anymore, that's just in your face. Like, the president is at least old school enough where he tried to code it by saying there's too many paid holidays. But other people are just like, Juneteenth, stupid. It's not a real holiday. Those people need their ass beat. The people that are proudly like, Juneteenth, stupid, Cinco de Mayo is not a real holiday, go back to Mexico, Like, people with mindsets like that are how ICE became a thing. And I know you're like, whoa, that's a huge jump, but it's actually not. Until we start holding people accountable again, until we stop being soft. And when I say we, again, it's like a cultural thing. We got to start punching people in the mouth. I'll leave with that. I'll end with that. Again, bunch of Nazi. Appreciate y'all for listening. This was a shorty, but I'm going to get outside and enjoy this heat, enjoy some of this good weather, maybe go sit by some water and relax. I suggest y'all do the same. And like, subscribe, comment, share anything with A Day with Dre. It's greatly appreciated. And y'all have a wonderful rest of your week. Peace.